Did you record? Awesome. There we go.
Should be good.
Over to you, Quinn.
Okay, so the reason why we're here today is that the national group for XR US, um, they decided that they want to restructure themselves, and they asked the local chapters to come up with some recommendations, specifically on two documents that were produced at the national level, but also just other recommendations about restructuring. And so at the strategy team, we decided that the strategy team itself could not possibly hope to sum up all the thoughts and feelings and desires and emotions of the entire group. So we host, decided to have the Citizens Assembly team host a People's Assembly so that everyone could have input into the process. So today, we're going to have a training for facilitators for that People's Assembly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Quinn, for sharing a little bit about why you're here. And so now if we could just go around and have each person share briefly why you're here. And I will time everyone for maximum of 2 minutes each, and Quinn will be facilitating.
Okay, so first on my screen, I have Nick. So Nick, do you want to talk a bit about why you're here?
Sure. So I would say the main reason I am interested in deliberative democracy is that I am so sick of our electoral politics, and even just within the Democratic Party, I'm so strongly emotional about how some people within it are pushing us back towards the middle instead of progress. And I think that having a process where regular people get to deliberate and talk about what the future should look like, there's a lot more hope than listening to some corporate politician tell us how they're going to make more money for rich people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next on my list, I have Peter. Do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm here because I share a lot of the feelings that were just expressed. Really frustrated with the status quo and how we're not really getting anywhere in our democracy. I have watched this take place over many, many decades, and it's as if we are just stuck in a wheel, and it's going round and round. And I would like to become, skilled in this particular way of doing things and see if it makes any difference.
Thank you. Rosa, do you want to go next?
Hold on, let me time myself. Okay. Yeah, I forget how it happened, but I'm out in the Berkshires, which is way out in the boonies of Massachusetts, and online I met, oh, cool. I met Nick and Quinn, and they're doing this assembly working group, and we just started talking. I started coming up to the meetings and just got really excited about the opportunity to do an online people's assembly. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Edwin, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'd also ask others to mute if you're not speaking. Just Peter is hearing a lot of noise from your computer. Kind of be somewhere you can hit the mute button.
I'm gonna have to find a mute button because right now I don't see one.
It's usually on the bottom, at the bottom. If you kind of take a cursor down, a little window pops up, and on the lower left-hand corner it says mute. Or the facilitator, whoever
actually I can
mute for you. That's it. Okay, he did it. So thanks. Yeah. So Edwin Rutch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy and the Empathy Circle, XR Empathy Circle work group. So been doing a lot with fostering empathic dialogue, different empathy building practices, and I've worked with Rosa before, just love working with Rosa, and really want to learn more about the people's assemblies, how we can incorporate empathy circles into people's assemblies and kind of spread that practice. So that's it.
Thank you. Virginia, would you like to go next?
Sure. I guess I'm here because, let's see, I've been involved with XR Mass for a while, currently the infrastructure coordinator. So trying to set up just the resources that we need, figure out how are we going to grow as an organization in a healthy way. And I'm really interested in this People's Assembly piece I get it that as, what's a different way of doing things that we can exemplify and also, right, kind of figure out as we go along, how can we, live and relate to each other less destructively? And sort of can we do that within our organization as well? So I'm excited for having this assembly to deal with the questions of like, how are we going to be as an organization, and also how will we have that process? So thanks.
Thank you. Pam, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Pam DeBona. I was in the early discussions on the People's Assembly working group. And I missed the last call because I just started teaching a class at UMass Boston on scientific and political change. And it's in the critical and creative thinking program. And so this is like right in line with all the stuff I'm trying to do outside of my work, which is trying to make things move a little more quickly. I'm a scientist for coastal zone management during the day, and so I'm trying to push from the edges. And I have a lot of experience in facilitation, but not in the People's Assembly version of it. So I'm really excited to try this out and see how we can make it work for XR.
Thank you. I think that was everyone. My list of people was kind of shuffling around at random points, so I got everyone right. I don't want to miss anyone. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Rosa is now going to have a PowerPoint presentation that kind of covers some of the history and different parts of the People's Assembly.
Whoops, sorry. Okay, cool. So I guess I'll share screen, and I'm going to set the timer because I'm going to really, well, actually there's two ways to do it. I can try and keep it really brief and then we can have conversation afterwards, or we can have questions and conversation as we go through it, but then we won't have a lot of time afterwards. And actually I think either way is fine. So yeah, so I'm just going to say that. And then I'm also going to say that all this stuff is from the manuals that exist. So I don't want to be reading a lot of stuff at you, but I just do want to be reviewing it in case people have not had a chance to look at it yet. So with that, I'm going to share screen. Whoops. Okay. So just the structure of our time today, or the structure of this presentation is brief history of People's Assemblies, talking a little bit about People's Assemblies in XR, a little bit about future democracy, and so the similarities and differences between the Citizens' Assemblies and the People's Assemblies, the various purposes that we can create a People's Assembly for, the three pillars, which are really key, and then three structural elements, main roles, and hand signs. So that's what this presentation is. And then after the slideshow, comments and questions for a little bit. And then we're going to shift into talking a little bit about this upcoming online PA, what our design for it is, and then what are some of the innovations. We're going to talk a little bit about using empathy circles for the small breakout groups. And then we're going to practice empathy circles here and do that a little bit, and then we'll have a debrief. So, brief history of People's Assemblies. So this is a grassroots method for self-organizing and direct action, and it's been at the center of a lot of very powerful people's movements. And, whoops, wrong way. And in XR, they're part of the strategy for 3 different things at least. One is internal organization and decision making. Another is direct action, because you can actually have a people's assembly as part of a direct action event. And then external outreach. Like, it might not be a direct action. You might be doing it in a legal place. You might not be risking arrest, but a lot of people can get attracted and say, hey, what's going on here? And can I join? And so it can become a way to bring people in. And people's assemblies are open to anyone who wants to participate and who agrees to following the principles and rules. And at the same time, since what is in our demands is a citizens' assembly, it's important that we make some real clear distinctions between them. But first of all, the rationale from which some of you already talked about moving beyond traditional representative democracy. Politicians are representing competing interests before they represent the interest of peoples and planet. And so that's why both of these forms, one parallel between them is that they're both ways of putting decision-making back in the hands of people and taking control back from corporate domination. That said, they're 2 very different forms. So the similarities is that they're both based on a facilitated assembly process, and there's support for people to share equally and openly. We want to create a non-judgmental and respectful environment. However, the citizens' assemblies are based on sortition. So it's like when you do a poll, you don't call every single person in the US. You get a reflective sample of the larger, an accurate sample of the larger population. The same way when you're doing a citizens assembly, you're working with an accurate sample of the larger whole. Whereas in people's assembly, everyone in a community or group is welcome. I do want to say a little bit more about that. Like, if we were doing a people's assembly for XR to decide on an internal structure, we might be wanting everybody who's part of that to actually be part of XR and to maybe have, read whatever documents we're trying to make a decision on. So it's not like everybody in the whole world is welcome, but we're not trying to get a smaller sampling. We're trying to get like the whole. So if we're doing an people's assembly in New York City for the larger community of New York City, and this were happening in Central Park, then every New Yorker would be welcome, right? I don't think we need to get too much into questions about, well, what if somebody is visiting or this or that? The basic principle is just that we want to hear from everyone, whereas in a citizens assembly, it's more like a poll. We want to hear from a smaller sample. So the citizens assemblies are also longer. They often have experts that brief the people on the particular policy issue. They're usually multiple sessions, and they're usually much more costly, which is why the XR groups are demanding that the government sponsor a citizens assembly that would be paid for by the government, but would be run through an impartial nonprofit. For example, in the UK, it's the Sortition Foundation. In the US, we have a place called the Jefferson Center that they don't do assemblies, but they do a smaller process called a citizens jury. But anyway, there's people who specialize in doing this kind of stuff. So the people's assemblies are generally a 1-session event. Less external input is needed, and so it's more of a do-it-yourself project. So after sortition, one of the most significant, this is basically a summary of what I already said, that the citizens assembly is a demand of government, whereas people's assembly is something that we are learning, not just we can learn, but right now we are learning to do ourselves with some training. Okay, so purposes. Movement building, as I mentioned before, there can be an assembly in a public space so people can join in and, experience the thrill of, I don't know how many of you were part of Occupy, but whenever people would go to the camps, it was so amazing because you could just sit down and have a real conversation about things that mattered with anyone. And so that's, you can think of it as a, pop-up camp whenever you have a people's assembly. They could be part of direct action, and then they could be part of internal organizing and decision making. And wide world applications. I was very moved when I read this in the guide. They can also help with deep adaptation. So if there's a community that's facing climate change issues, the more of us are skilled at various forms of participatory democracy, the more that we can help our communities, everyone in our communities, not just activists, come together and move forward. So the 3 pillars: radical inclusivity. That's a really important one. And there's actually an inclusivity statement that is part of the script. And then active listening. The reason we're going to be experimenting with empathy circles as part of this is because it's a way to actually model active listening. Whereas, you can just say, oh, everybody should be doing this inside their heads, but we can't really, know whether people are actively listening or not. So this is one of the 3 pillars already, and empathy circles is kind of one way to operationalize it. And then trust. We really want to build trust by sticking with these principles. We don't want somebody to come in and then somehow end up being shamed or like their voice isn't welcome or whatever. So 3 structural elements. There's an initial part, which sometimes includes a brief history, just because we want to educate people, when they're coming, as to what it is. Read the inclusivity statement, describe the 3 pillars, and then hang the hand signals, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then part of the input is the purpose of this assembly. Why are we having this assembly, and where are what are the questions we're going to be exploring, and then where is the outcome going to go, and what larger process is it going to feed into? And then there's work in small groups. The first part is kind of more open-ended. That the last part, we're kind of checking that what the note taker has been writing up is what the small group wants to have written up. Because then we'll come back in the large group and the note takers share input with the whole group. And the whole group gets to do the little twinkle thing, and we get to see how much support there is for the various input, for the various things that have been come up in the small groups. And then brief announcements and closing. So those are like kind of the 3 stages of the People's Assembly's main roles. For the assembly, there's ideally 2 lead facilitators with gender balance and an assembly note taker. And then for each of the small breakout groups, they say no more than 8 people per group. When you do these live in the empathy circles, where they're probably going to be even smaller, like no more than 5. And we want 1 facilitator and 1 note taker per each group. And last but not least, the hand signs. So you may have seen these already. People raise a finger if they want to make a point. 2 fingers if they feel like they have a direct point and want to jump the queue, which can be a little tricky. The waving hands, I agree. The C, request for clarification. Technical point, like, hey folks, we have to leave the room in 5 minutes, so we're going to need to regroup somewhere else. It's not about the content of the conversation, it's about the larger process. And then speak up, like if we can't hear somebody. Ooh, that's it. So, and I made it to the end of the slide deck. So stop share. Cool. So, thank you. So any thoughts, insights, comments, things that aren't clear? Oh, and we can use the hand signs. Yes, Quinn.
One thing that I just wanted to point out is that the citizens' assemblies aren't always necessarily government responsibilities. Like, for example, in Belgium, they had a experiment called the G1000, where a private organization got together 1,000 randomly selected people and held a citizens' assembly. So if private organizations can do it, it's more costly and takes time and is trickier than doing a people's assembly.
Thank you. Yes.
When we had previously, just on the mechanics of it, when we had previously talked about how to do the reporting out. We had thought that maybe someone other than the note taker might do that reporting so that we make sure we get more voices.
Yep.
And then in terms of the gender balance, one thing I wanted to put forward, and it, you guys can counter me if you want, if you have other thoughts. But one thing that I see happening a lot in especially work situations is that everybody, whenever it's time to find out who's going to take notes, all eyes turn to the female in the group. And so I'm thinking that maybe we deliberately say that the note takers in the breakout groups have to be male, at least for this first round. And just to make sure that we don't fall into that bias.
I don't know if he'll be joining us, but my husband is a great note taker. Yeah, cool. Anything else? Yes.
Just kind of along the same lines as that, in the document, it recommends that during the input phase, a woman be selected to speak first, just because it's been shown that that encourages more participation from the other women in the room. So,
Yeah, thank you. That's specifically also in this thing that sometimes for the input, there's a process called, well, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's
testify, I think.
Testify, yeah. Where, because sometimes the people's assemblies really are just to promote conversation about crucial topics, and they aren't about making a decision. And so especially, so if there's an assembly whose purpose is to make a decision, we're probably going to use more of the input time to give some background and context on the decision that needs to be made. But if the purpose of the assembly is to really spark conversation, then one way to do it is to invite people to testify in front of the whole assembly before we break into groups. And that was specifically the context where if a woman speaks first before a large group, it makes it more likely that other women will dare to do that as well. And so it's just short turns before the whole group about why you're here, to kind of seed then the conversation in smaller groups about the issue. That's the testify process. And I just want to note that Pam mentioned two things: that the note takers not necessarily be female, but that we could experiment with asking for them specifically to be male. And also that reporting back, it may not be just the note taker, it could be other people in the group. And so when Quinn and I had been talking about this before, we were talking about just leaving it up to each group, and that they could have different people or like that. But we can talk more about that, if that's okay, when we go over the outline that we have for the 23rd, if that would be okay. Yes, Peter.
And mute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. A question about the active listening, because in a process that I'm already familiar with, part of active listening has the next person to speak repeat and summarize what the previous person has said in order to make sure that they got it. And, to sort of affirm that. Does that have a place here?
Yeah, so this is not what the online people's assemblies, this is not what the in-person people's assemblies have done yet, like the ones in Spain and
Mm-hmm.
like when we look at the history. That's not something that they've experimented with yet. At the same time, we are really wanting to do that specifically with this online people's assembly, in part because there's been a lot of acrimony around these two proposals. And so given that, we just want to intentionally create a structure where the next person to speak has to kind of show that they're active listening by reflecting back and summarizing what the previous person had said. So we are intentionally planning to add that as an experiment for this structure. Both Edwin and I have a lot of experience with doing that with different groups and having it work well. And so then afterwards, we'll see how that goes. So yes.
Great.
Okay.
That's good.
Pam.
On that point, when I do practice with dialogue, it isn't always that you have people summarize what the person before them said, because then you get into a situation where people start arguing over what they actually said sometimes, but more referencing what the person before them said to show that they heard what the central point is. So I don't know if that's too much of a fine point on it, but it might help with timing and making sure that we move along in the decision making.
Yeah, so thank you for raising that question. A couple clarifications. First thing is, we're not actually going to be doing decision making in this meeting. We're going to be gathering input. And then the second thing is that there's many ways of doing dialogue. And oh, we can say hello if you have somebody who wants to say hello.
This is Noah.
Hi, Noah. How are you?
Good. He just
Okay.
came from his tutoring at the library, so
Right.
all wound up.
Great. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways of doing dialogue, and many of us have training and practice in lots of different ways. And for this one, we're specifically going to be using empathy circles, in part because that's a format that has been, that Edwin has been offering to XR through a lot of online groups. So there's a lot of people who are becoming aware of it and starting to practice with it. And so because this is a situation where we're not doing decision making, we're not like that, it just seems like it lends itself well to do that. Okay, anything else? So would it be a good time to Quinn, do you want to say a little bit more about the purpose of this coming online People's Assembly, or did we already kind of get that, or?
I can kind of reiterate just really briefly, but the purpose is that we're going to be gathering input to give to the national group about the restructuring process, their restructuring process. And so the input that's kind of being fed into the assembly are these two different documents that have come out of different branches of the national group. So we're gonna have the people in the assembly read those documents and read abridged versions of those documents. And then the assembly will generate new ideas and specifically what they like about the documents, what they don't like about the documents. And that input, it's not a decision. We're not saying like, we're voting for one of these two documents or the other. We're just giving input on the documents to the national group so that they can put that forward in their restructuring process.
Yeah, and if it might help to share our draft timeline here. Whoops, where is it? And I just want to clarify that when Quinn said we're giving input on what we like about, we're not like globally, oh, I like this one document, but it's just about parts or yeah, like concepts that are in there. So I like in this document where it says this, I think that that's important and that should be moved forward to whatever synthesis version gets created. Or in this part of this other document, it says this, and I have a concern about that and I have an alternative proposal for how to meet that need. So it's more like what elements of either one of these documents do you want to see move forward? And are there any elements of these documents that you're concerned about? So as Quinn said, in preparation, we're going to ask people to read beforehand, but at the same time, we're not, you can't expect that people will do that. Some people will, some people won't. So at the beginning of the meeting, so first a brief overview of people's assemblies, brief overview of people's assemblies, and then the aim of this assembly, and then what we call input to the assembly. That's where we actually give time for people to read in the moment a brief synopsis or summary of each proposal. And then that kind of has some of the key points of each of them. And then when we do an empathy circle, one of the things we like to do is give some time for people to write some brief thoughts in silence in response to the question before going into the breakout groups. Because then that way, when they're listening to another person, they don't need to worry about, well, what am I going to say when it's my turn? Because they already have some initial thoughts on paper. And they're always free to just say whatever they want to when it's their turn. They don't have to stick to what they wrote beforehand, but it's like a little bit of a launch pad for that. So that all about 30 minutes would happen at the beginning of the assembly. And that would be facilitated by the assembly facilitators. And then we'd move into breakout groups where we'd be in empathy circle format. And one of the things we're going to be doing here in just a few minutes is actually practicing empathy circles among ourselves. But there'd be first a round of names in the small group, and then we'd start doing the empathy circle process. And we have 50 minutes for that. And in the last 10 minutes, we'd be rounding up. We would be looking at whatever the notes are that the note taker has made, making sure that everything that was important got on there. And then we come back into the large group. Whoops, I forgot to put time for that. So this first one is 30 minutes. This one is an hour. So this phase 3, this is 30 minutes. So we're reviewing the hand signals, and then we have a process. This is actually, some of you may be aware of it. It's the nominal group process, where we go around and we say to one group, can you say something from your list of notes? And then we ask if any other group has that same item. We ask for wavy hands to show agreement, etc., for concerns. But then when the second group goes, they read one item from their notes and they're not going to read the same thing. It's like, does anyone have something different? And then the third group, again, does anyone have something different? And we go around that way with the groups until everybody has shared everything that's on their notes. And then we come back and we explore the concerns, because based on the principle that we really want to hear minority perspectives, and it might not be, because usually the way that it goes in small groups, the note taker is noting the points where there's major agreement, but there might be like one or two people who have serious concerns about that, and we want to understand where those concerns are coming from. We aren't going to do that the first time around in the integration, just because we want to really hear the broad thing of what all was said in the different groups, make a list of the concerns, and then go back through and start to hear those concerns. And then we do a closing. We reiterate what will happen to the input, ask for people for feedback on a feedback document. There will be a feedback document after this where you can go in and say what worked well for you about the training. And likewise, we want to have a feedback document after the assembly. And then we have a closing round. And then there's follow-up after the assembly. We'll put a public post, thank people for participating, share the feedback with the strategy team. They will share the input with the national one. And any of you who want to help facilitate, any of you who want to help to facilitate the small groups will be sending out this agenda for what the whole assembly will look like, so you can have a sense of how it all flows. Thoughts or questions about any of that? Okay, are we ready for empathy circles? All right. Edwin, what do you think? We've got 7 people. Do you think like a group of 4 and a group of 3, or do you think we should try and do it in a group of 7? Whoops, you still there?
It looks like a screensaver picture.
Yeah, I know. He may have stepped away briefly. Well, let me just ask again. Edwin, are you still here? Okay, so I'm going to take that as the universe saying that we're going to go ahead and do it in one group. And it, just to say, it is a bit of a large group to do empathy circles in. So, and the reason for having them smaller is to just not tax anyone's patience before they get a chance to speak. But let's go ahead and start with the first part, which is having all of us have a little bit of time to do a silent write. So what the question that I'm going to be posing is, what is your experience to date with empathy circles? And do you have any specific questions or concerns or anxieties about it, as well as anything you might be looking forward to it? So just previous experience and then questions, concerns, da, 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 da. So we're going to be silent for a couple minutes. I'm going to set this to 2 minutes so that we can all have a chance to make some notes. Looks like most of you are pretty much done. Is there anybody who would like a little bit more time? Okay. All right. Edwin, I think you might have stepped away for a moment.
I did, sorry. I had
No
an
worries.
emergency call.
Yes, I was wondering whether we were going to break up into 2 groups or do it in one, and I just kind of took it as a sign that maybe we do it in one, even though we have 7 people. Are you okay with that? Okay, awesome. So as a facilitator of the empathy circle, one of the things that you will be doing is simply modeling the process by offering to be the first listener. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to say, I will be the first listener of the empathy circle process, and I'm going to invite somebody to go first. We're not going to start quite yet. I'm going to say a little bit more about it, but that's like the basic facilitation tool, is simply modeling empathic listening, right? So the way that we do empathy circles is that each pair, the speaker and the listener, that pair is going to have a turn of 5 minutes to help the speaker feel heard. And what I like to explain is that it's not the speaker going on and on and on for 5 minutes and then the poor listener going, oh my gosh, how do I reflect that back, right? But that part of equalizing power, which is one of the principles in XR, but in empathy circles, part of equalizing power is that the power does not all belong to the speaker, unlike in our culture where the speaker can go on and the people in power are the ones who give speeches and the people who aren't in power are the ones who listen. So one of the things that we do is that whenever the listener wants to request a pause, we need to come up with a hand signal. And this is not one of the established ones, right? Because we haven't done a lot of empathy circles in people's assemblies before. When I'm working with a Buddhist group, we might use the hands and bowing. It could just be a pointed finger with the understanding a V, peace or pause, right? Okay, we could do a peace sign. I love that. Okay, so for our group, if that's okay with everyone, for the pause, we'll do a peace sign. And so when the speaker has gone on for long enough that the listener is listening intently but feels like I'm about to lose everything I'm holding in my head if this person goes on and tells me a whole other, unfurls a whole other aspect or dimension or wrinkle of their story, they're going to say, and then they're going to say, may I reflect back what I've heard so far? I love to ask it as a question, even if we've all already agreed, right? In part because when I teach empathy circles, I really like for people to learn it in a way that then they can use it in their daily lives. And in your daily life, if you just start to reflect people back without asking permission, some people will get really upset. It's like, oh, I don't want any of that psychology stuff, But if you say, I really would like to understand, make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Would it be okay with you if I reflected back what I'm hearing? Most people will say yes. So I think it's a really good idea to get in the habit of asking, may I reflect? We don't need to say it very long here because we already kind of have an understanding that that's what we're doing. And then you just reflect back, right? What do you think that person's saying? And then I love asking at the end, is that close? Because we're not trying to model our great listening skills. We're not trying to show that we understand. We're just really trying to offer the person. And so we need to be correctable. Did I get it? Is that close? And then usually if it is, the person will say, yeah, that's great. And there's more, right? Because when we feel we're really being heard, it kind of opens the doors and they'll just continue. So that's what we do. It's like a dance between the speaker and the listener for 5 minutes. And as a facilitator, I'm also timing. So when the time is up, it's not a harsh, abrupt end. It's, could you please wrap up what you're saying and give one last chance to the listener to reflect back. And then the listener becomes the new speaker. When we're doing this yes, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if the time stops while the listener is reflecting back.
Nope.
Okay.
No, the time is for the team. And so then the listener becomes the new speaker. They choose a different person. To keep it simple, I like to just really keep it as a circle and going around. I know that in Edwin style, you often kind of mix it up a little bit more, but just to keep it simple this time, just choose a person that hasn't spoken yet. And like that. So I don't want to say too much more about it because I would love to have us just do it. So unless there's any more questions. Oh yeah, and then the person at the end, if they feel heard, they'll say, I feel heard. And that's kind of like, and if it's before 5 minutes, there's an option. So the listener might say, is there more? And the person, they don't have to fill up the time. Like if they're really uncomfortable, etc., they can just say, that's it. That's the end of my turn. Or they can just say, well, let me check. And it's okay to have some silent time and something else might come. So, yeah. Yes. Nick.
Does it have to be directly related to the questions, or could it just be like how the person is feeling? Like, is it kind of open to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really depends on the context, right? So I love holding empathy circles where we just say, here's a question and take it very lightly. And you can also speak about whatever's in your heart and mind. Like, I love doing it that way. When we're here with a specific intention or a purpose, I do it slightly different, right? It's like if a person is speaking about something, as the facilitator, I might say, just clarification, could you make explicit the connection between what you're saying and the question that we're exploring here? Because often people will have a connection in their mind and it's not obvious to anybody else. So I don't want to assume that there's no connection between what they're saying and the question. They may say, well, actually, there's no connection. I just had to get that off my chest first, and here's my response to the question, and that's fine. Or they might say, yeah, for me, there's this totally obvious connection, and here's what it is. And then everybody goes, wow, because all of a sudden we can see it, whereas before we couldn't. So that's a question that I do ask when we actually really have a theme that we want to gently remind people about. Okay. So are we ready? And would someone volunteer to go first as the first speaker?
I also want to let you know I should go, if not at 4, shortly thereafter.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we had an end time. But I guess since I wanted to say that, I'm also jumping in to speak.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Who's listening?
I'm the first one because I want to model it. Yeah?
Okay, great.
Okay.
So the question about experience with empathy circles and questions, concerns, etc. I guess about what would I need to be ready to help facilitate, I see is the second piece of that. So about my experience, I'm not sure I've done a thing with using that name specifically. So a few things that came to mind that I've done that are sort of related along those. Circling as a verb, I think has a lot in common. It's sort of like less about a deliberative answering a question. And yes.
Cool. May I reflect back what I said so far? Okay. Yeah. So you had a wonderful reframe for the second question about, you were saying, what will I need in order to feel comfortable to facilitate an empathy circle? So I just want to really appreciate that. And then you also shared, you were starting to talk about your experience, not exactly with this, but things that are related to it. And one of these things is circling. Is that close?
Yeah, very much. So circling, which I've done sort of a few times in a group near where I live in Somerville, some sort of people I met socially and did this a few times. I guess then also like meditative speaking practice, kind of insight dialogue type things is also, it seems like a similar thing that I've done. Also not in a facilitation role, just as a participant. And then as I've been learning a lot about meeting facilitation, especially through XR, and ways of having a sense of empathy and sort of the social and interpersonal piece of what's happening in an activist type organizing meeting, trying to be aware of those.
Cool. So in addition to circling, which you've done some with friends, you've also have experience with meditative speaking in something called insight dialogue, and you feel like there's going to be an application from that into this. And then you've also been doing a lot of meeting facilitation with XR, and you've particularly been kind of paying attention to social interpersonal dynamics that come up. Is that close?
Very much. Yeah, those are all the things I had specifically taken notes of on my during our writing time. and now I'm coming to the questions and the what do I need piece with nothing to stand on here. But I think it'll definitely be, it would be a new experience that I would be kind of curious to explore, and it's the kind of thing that I find exciting in a bunch of ways. And I think being transparent with that, not trying to pretend to be more of an expert than I feel like would be my strategy for jumping in.
Awesome. So this will be a new experience and you're excited to explore it. And you're feeling comfort in just being transparent about saying, hey, I'm looking forward to jumping in. So
yeah. I don't know where we are on time, but I feel like I've hit all the points that I.
Yeah, you have another minute and a little bit more. If there's something, do you want to just pause and see if anything comes up?
I really appreciate. I'm glad that I joined this meeting today. I was sort of puttering around my house and saw this message from Nick about we're having this training. I was like, oh, that's a thing I could do. So it's great to see you all, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, you're feeling good about your jumping on this, and it was kind of last minute. You just saw the message to today, and so far you're enjoying being here, and so yeah, great, awesome. All right, thank you. So understanding that you will need to jump off at some point, we're going to be going around the circle, and I'm going to be the next to speak, and I'm going to pick someone else because you just spoke, so we usually don't pick the person who has just spoken to reflect back so that they can just kind of yeah, looking forward to having you join us again, Virginia. So I would like to pick Pam. Would you be willing to be my listener?
Sure.
Okay. Let me set the timer. Okay. So what did I write down? I have, some amount of experience with this particular format. I also really, really, really enjoy people bringing in other experience with other formats, because that's how I love to teach. Whenever I'm teaching anything, I really want to make room for people to share what kinds of related experiences they've had, even if it's not exactly the same thing. So I'm just really enjoying what's been shared along those lines so far.
Do you mind if I reflect back what I've heard so far? So it sounds like you're looking forward to bringing your past experience to this effort, and also learning from other people's experience with similar things that will help you in your growing as a facilitator. I think I might have just put words in your mouth, though.
It's close enough. It's just fine. I'm just noticing how bad the light is here. I'm not sure what I can do about it. And I am feeling I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety because I have done empathy circles in a lot of other contexts, but not specifically in an XR People's Assembly, right? So there's a dimension of newness to it. So there's a little bit of anxiety there. And at the same time, I'm also really looking forward to it. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to about it is that I really like empathy circles where we are not just talking about feelings, but also perspective taking, right? Like reflecting back people's thinking and ideas. And that I have done in other contexts. And one of the things I really like about that is that it's a bit stereotype busting, because people tend to think of empathy circles as like this thing that is only good for touchy-feely stuff. And I just know that that's not the case. So I'm really looking forward to offering people an experience of that.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll reflect back. What I heard is that you're a little bit anxious about this new setting for empathy circles, but you're also thinking that this is an exciting opportunity to bring empathy circles to a new setting where people might not otherwise think of them as being relevant. Is that close?
Yeah, specifically because people tend to compartmentalize and associate that empathy circles are all about dealing with feelings, and oftentimes people don't understand that it's actually a really good way to share ideas.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, could I just hear that last bit back and then I'm done.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so so you're particularly interested in making sure that people don't only think of empathy circles as a touchy-feely sort of approach, but that instead, and that it also is useful in this sort of setting with people sharing, I don't want to say more content, but it's more more collective conversation.
Thank you. It feels really good to hear that. Thank you so much,
Good.
Pam. I feel heard.
Good.
Okay, so Pam, since you were the listener, now you are the next speaker.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I think I'm going to choose Quinn, since he's sitting right below me in the Hollywood squares here, which just showed off how old I am.
Okay.
So Quinn, I have on my list talking about experience, and I kind of hinted earlier that I've hosted a lot of like dialogue practice, mostly in settings where people are looking at a common problem together, and so we're trying to tease out what the different aspects of that problem might be that we might take a closer look at. And so I think that that's going to be useful in this particular application of the empathy circles. That thing that is challenging to me is, oops, go ahead. Sorry, Quinn.
So what I've heard you say so far is that your experience is that you have experience hosting dialogue practice, especially in situations where I might have missed that last part. If you would like to repeat it again.
Yeah, sure. So it's more in settings where people have shared a reading or a problem or a case study that we're trying to all tease out some of the components together.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you have experience dealing with dialogue practice in settings where there's some kind of problem that everyone is trying to tease out solutions for. Is that close?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's not usually isn't a problem that is like life-threatening, but something that people have come up against, and they're looking for some feedback on how they might approach it. And so it is kind of an interpersonal exchange, but I don't want to say poor Rosa. She just said it's not touchy-feely, but I haven't heard of the empathy circle as a way to describe it previously. So I'm really excited to learn more and practice more. So a couple of things that I was worried about. I was going to change to what I'm worried about and making sure I could do this right. So do you want to reflect back on what I just said with the
Sure.
previous?
Yeah, so you said that you continued on the thought that that the situations that you have experience with leading and hosting are where people are looking for solutions, not life-threatening solutions, you said, but some kind of personal problem or some kind of problem that they have and they need to find answers to that. And then you said that you were excited to find to this new application. You said that you hadn't heard the term empathy circles before, but you mentioned that you were excited to try it. Is that close?
Yes, that's great. Thanks, Quinn. So the two things that I want to make sure that I'm able to put the setting out properly in the empathy circles. And one is making sure that people realize they'll get a chance to bring up their concerns, because the sequence, it says give people like they're going to raise their concerns, and then you're going to tell them, oh yeah, we'll wait for later. And sometimes it's like the kiss of death is putting the bill out to study. And so I'm a little bit worried about making sure I do that right, so that people realize that it's not just brushing them off, but making sure that their concerns will be considered. And then the other is making sure that people are encouraged and do the reading and the work up ahead of time, and that people who do that work aren't getting too frustrated if there are people who haven't done the work. So that's always a balance. You don't want to leave anybody behind when you're coming together, but you also don't want the people who actually did the work to get annoyed, because then they're starting off on the wrong foot. So that's another piece of the puzzle that I would love some noodling about.
Yeah, so what I heard was that you had two main, not necessarily concerns, or maybe you would say concerns, but two things that you'd like to think about as a group. One of those things was that you wanted to make sure that people with concerns felt heard, and that they didn't felt kind of brushed aside when we say, oh, we'll come back to those um, concerns, and you wanted to make sure that they feel like they're being heard when they have legitimate concerns. And then the other thing that you said was that you wanted to make sure that people didn't feel frustrated, and you wanted to strike a balance between people who had done the reading beforehand and the people who might have only read the synopsis or on the day of when we do the synopsis reading.
Right.
And yeah, so those were the two main points that I heard. Is that close?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Quinn.
Cool.
Good job.
I'm going to jump off now. Bye.
All right.
Bye, Virginia.
Bye. Okay, so was that the signal that was time,
Yeah.
Rosa?
That was
Okay.
fine. And so now you are the next speaker, and you're going to choose someone else to be your listener.
Nick, would you like to be my listener?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Okay, so as far as my experience with empathy circles and that kind of similar idea, one of my experiences is that when I was in high school, we did a lot of Socratic dialogue and Socratic seminars in our history classes, and we were really encouraged to write down what other people were saying and to pay attention to other people were saying. In fact, part of our grade was whether we were paying attention. So that was really kind of enforcing that kind of active listening, because if we weren't actively listening, our grade would suffer. So I had that kind of experience from it. And then also just the other day, me and Rosa practiced with this on one of our calls. And so that was specifically with empathy circles, or I guess it was an empathy duo at that point because two people were on the call. But yeah, so those are my experiences with empathy circles and similar concepts.
Do you mind if I kind of wrap that up and
Please do.
say
Yeah.
what I heard? All right. So what I heard is that your experience isn't directly with empathy circles mainly, but comes from in your classes you've used Socratic method, which is discussing topics with a classroom of people, and part of your grade was actively listening and taking notes on what other people were saying. So you are familiar with having to listen and pay attention, which is great. And you also have spent some time with Rosa doing a practice empathy circle the other day, which is also great.
Yep. And then as far as how I'm feeling about facilitating and just the assembly, about the assembly in general, I'm very excited about the prospect of it. I've said before that I think that this is the future of democracy in a lot of ways, and that this type of conversation is really healthy. And I think that the more that we implement it in our democratic structures and decision making in organizations, the healthier those will be. And I'm so excited that so many people turned out to this call. Yeah, those are my two main points on how I'm feeling.
So I think that can be wrapped up as a lot of excitement from you. Excitement not just to have some people's assemblies and try out some new forms of organizing, but also general excitement about how that can progress into the future to really reshape our systems and bring some democracy, real democracy, not just to our organization, but to the world. Is
Yeah,
that
thank
close?
you. Yeah, I feel heard. Those were my main two things. How are we looking on time, Rose? More?
Yes.
Okay. Let me think for a second if I have any other main points. I mean, I'm nervous as well as being excited. I'm more of my personality is more introverted than extroverted, so this type of thing doesn't come exactly naturally to me. But I think that since I value it, I'll be able to kind of push through that anxiety and nervousness and be able to productively be a part of the assembly and facilitate maybe. So yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that along with the excitement, there's some logically, there's some nerves along with that. And since you are tend towards the introverted on the introvert extrovert spectrum, that you're understandably anxious, but you are excited to push through and you are going to power through those nerves and be a productive facilitator.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel heard.
Awesome. So do I choose a listener now? Peter, would you mind being my listener?
I will.
Awesome. All right. So I don't have any specific experience with empathy circles, at least not by that name. I would say, similar to Quinn, I have some experience in classrooms having active listening. And also within XR, we have done small breakout groups where we share with each other how we're feeling and talk about some topics. Yep.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you don't have any specific experience with empathy circles, but that you've had related experience in classrooms and educational situations, and that you've done a little bit within XR.
Yep.
Did I get it?
Perfect. And some of my questions that I have, I guess it's not super relevant for this upcoming People's Assembly, but when people are sharing more emotions and feelings, I feel like having an online meeting with strangers on the internet isn't the most open and safe spot for some people. So concern over how much people are willing to share and how safe we can make the space in an online meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So your chief concern seems to be that in an online situation, which is different from being in a room with somebody, it's harder to sort of generate the kind of safety that would make it a good place for people to share honestly what their feelings are.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And then more from a logistical standpoint, I'm not super experienced with Zoom meetings, and I'm not sure how efficiently we can run the breakout rooms and make sure that facilitators are in there to do it and make sure it's run properly.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You're a little nervous about running a Zoom meeting, even a small one, properly and efficiently,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I've got. So I will pass my time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, Peter.
You're welcome. So I guess I would pick Edwin to be my
Listening. Mm-hmm.
your listener, my listener, right?
Yep, listening.
So the experience part, my experience has been more in the touchy-feely range, insofar as I've worked with groups in sort of therapeutic situations. I was part of the leadership team for something called the Opening the Heart Workshop, which took place over many, many years in places like Kripalu and the Open Center, etc. But the setup was somewhat different in that everybody was present. We were sitting in a circle, maybe of about 7 people, strangely enough. And it was...
Just reflect that.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing is that you've done similar type of practice, and it's been more of in the touchy-feely realm, and it was some centers where you had done this before.
Correct.
Mm.
Yes.
And it was in person.
Yes, it was very. It was very much in person. The thing about them was that the emotional part was easier to create that sense of safety because people were present. And when we were actually running these circles, the person who was the speaker actually was able to sit next to the person who, sorry, I flunked myself off, sit next to the person who was the listener. So there was no great physical distance between them. And so that also played a part in making it easier to reflect back what they were saying.
Mm-hmm. So for ease of reflection and for sort of a feeling of safety, being in person together kind of helped, and also being able to sit really close to each other, that also supported that feeling of safety.
Correct. Now, you know, what makes me a little nervous about this online situation is that that is not the case. And I also feel nervous about, I'm not very facile at managing, you know, a Zoom session. So I feel like, you know, I would be wanting to receive more training in that and would need to look into that further before feeling more confident.
Mm-hmm. So you're feeling some nervousness or anxiety about the platform of using the internet, Zoom
Right.
process, and then just maybe you'd feel more comfortable if you had more training in the
Yes.
with the technology.
Right. And I want to say that, you know, having this experience of this training and actually participating in this circle here gives me a much better idea of what to expect, and also some more confidence, although I realize I have more training to do as far as the hardware is concerned.
Yeah, so just what we're doing right here is sort of part of that training. You're already starting to feel a bit more at ease, but still realizing you have still a ways to go.
Yes, yeah. And I think finally the other sort of thing that is sort of a little bit, gives me a little bit of pause is that I'm an older white man. And, you know, in terms of having a greater range of people in these meetings, you know, I want to be able to feel comfortable, you know, with that and sort of get more practice in being in that kind of a situation.
So you're saying you're an older white male and you would like to get comfortable being in these type of situations, being an older white male?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of culturally, being able to relate fully with people, and also, in terms of age, I recognize, okay, I'm older. There are a lot of people, a lot of younger people in the organization, and I want to be able to have good connection with them and understand their points of view too.
So you'd really like to understand the variety of people, the younger people, and just have a real sense of connection with them.
Right. And I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks. Then
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll speak to Rosa.
Yes,
You're
Edwin.
muted. Yeah. So I started with the thinking about empathy circles at Occupy Wall Street. And Occupy Wall Street, it was like I was here in Berkeley in the encampment, created an empathy tent there, called it the 100% empathy tent. And we're offering listening and different practices. And the practices didn't really work well in that environment. It was very dysfunctional. So after that, I just started thinking, what can we do? Yeah.
Yeah, so you started exploring empathy in a political context in Occupy Wall Street out in Oakland, and
Berkeley.
And what?
Berkeley.
Oh, in Berkeley. Okay, out in Berkeley, and it was intense because things didn't work so well at first in that environment.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about empathy circles ever since, just how do we create them? The idea was that instead of having like big, assemblies or so forth, that we would have a lot of little circles with people talking. So people would just start learning to practice talking to each other. So that's kind of what was one of the intentions, because general assemblies were not really working, so they were kind of dysfunctional.
Yeah, so the general assemblies weren't working so well, and so you were thinking that if we could have people in small groups, just hearing and listening to each other, that would be more effective.
Yeah, so anyway, I've been since then been thinking about it, trying to promote, develop and promote the practice. So now I'm really excited just to see, XR, it's kind of like Occupy 2.0, and can we bring these practices in? So I see just the potential here. I'm just so excited about what you're doing with the people's, bringing your experience with people's assemblies and kind of combining it with empathy circles. I just see it as, I'm just really excited about the possibilities.
Yeah, you're really excited about the possibilities because this is kind of like an Occupy 2.0. We get to try it again and figure out better, more effective ways of doing things. And you like that people are combining other methods with empathy circles.
Yeah, and there's so much to learn, like just all the different steps, how do we organize it? And so that's a little bit of the anxiety is, is it going to be too technical, too difficult? Can we make it an easy experience? And just all the different organizational, structural stuff. It's a lot of work, and glad that you're part of this because you're really good at it. So
you're seeing the importance of details and like figuring out how to not make it too complicated, not make it overwhelming, and how to work with the organizational structures. And you're happy that I'm here in this with you doing it.
Yeah, it takes some of the anxiety off because I just know I feel comfortable with your presence being part of it.
Yeah, so it helps to manage the anxiety that we're all feeling in one way or another. To feel a sense of comfort in some of your faces.
Yeah, I feel heard, fully heard. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Everybody here is no longer an empathy circle virgin. Yeah, actually, let's see, what shall we do next? When I'm doing empathy circles for the first time with people, I often have a second round where it's just 2-minute lightning round, and just to keep practicing. But the question, and to debrief, and the question is often, what did you notice? How was that for you? What did you feel? And I'm wondering, even though everybody here is such an experienced listener, I'm wondering if it might make sense to just do a 1-minute round of that, if you all would be willing. Yeah. So cool. And so we've had a person step out, so we can't do the exact same thing, so which is good. I'll just mix it up and kind of go backwards. So Peter, would you be willing to be my listener? Okay, so I'm gonna set my time here. I'm just feeling delighted, really glad at the level of openness and honesty of what people shared, and really looking forward to, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I heard a great big sigh.
I feel heard. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Sigh of relief and lots of just zestful joy at everyone sharing.
You're feeling a lot of joy at participating in this and seeing other people, and you are enjoying the process.
And that's my minute. So thank you so much.
So I pick a listener now, or what? Okay, and doesn't have to be the same person. Okay, Quinn, will you listen for me?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Wow, this is exciting. I'm very much kind of engaged by it, and really want to improve at it. I want to become very, very skilled and facile with the process. I don't think I'm experiencing too much of a difficulty with the reflecting back, because that's something that I've had some experience with before. So yeah, I'm ready to go with this and look forward to further encounters.
Yeah, so what I heard was that, first, may I reflect back?
Oh, of course, please.
Okay. And what I've heard is that you are excited, for one, and you want to become more experienced and facile with this whole process, and you are feeling pretty confident with the actual reflecting back part because of your previous experience with it.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. And
Okay.
I'm done.
Pam, do you want to be my listener?
Yes, of course. Listening.
Okay. So I am also feeling excited that I mean, everyone seems to be kind of naturals here, and so I guess I expected a lower turnout. I expected fewer people to really get it and be excited, and I'm thoroughly surprised and elated that everyone seems to be really good at this and really engaged, and so many people showed up.
Great. So is it okay if I reflect back what I just heard?
Absolutely.
Great. So yeah, you're happy that people have taken to the practice relatively easily, and that a bunch of people showed up for the training, and you're just looking forward to having everybody participate. Did I get that close
Yep.
enough?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank
Thank you.
Nick, aka Niels.
Yes.
So I thoroughly enjoyed being on with you the Zoom meeting today with you guys. I'm really excited. And I'm really looking forward to trying this out. The online piece is a little bit daunting, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to figure it out. And one thing I wanted to notice in the listening that we did is that when Nick, when you were reflecting back, you would do this little encouraging thing like, yeah, that's really cool, and understandably you're nervous. So I kind of like that, and I don't know if that's part of the empathy circle, but as long as you're saying that's BS, then I think that's good. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
You mind if I report back what I've heard?
Please.
So I'm hearing some gratefulness just to be on the call with everyone and to be part of this sort of group pushing forward the assembly and the empathy circles in just listening and talking with everyone today. You also appreciated my version of listening where I input my own thoughts on it, which I wasn't sure if that was good or bad. So I'm glad you liked it. And I think I missed one other point. I'm not sure.
If you did, I forgot it too, so it must not have been very important.
Okay.
I think you got it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Edwin, would you like to listen for me?
Mm-hmm. Listening.
So I am also feeling grateful to be part of this and for everyone being here. I was a little nervous about listening and reporting back and everything, and but it seems to have gone well. And I can definitely see how larger empathy circles can be a little unwieldy, as it can be hard to pay attention if you're not going for 5 to 10 to 15, 20 minutes. So I think keeping it smaller is definitely ideal. I can see why Rosa was thinking 4 people would be good.
So you're feeling a little bit nervous to begin with about the process, but everything seemed to have gone well, and you can see the difficulty, the potential of really large groups, and you're understanding why small groups of 4 or so would work well.
Yes, perfectly said. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. I lost track of who. Rosa, I guess, is what you get? Yeah, I feel, I'm really excited. There's something about just seeing the potential of what can happen, just everybody's enthusiasm about this and the potential of how this can spread throughout XR.
I want to mirror back this potential spreading. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so it's a spreading, and it's sort of a spreading of an empathic mindset and, caring, inclusion, and innovation too. So it's kind of those qualities I can see could spread. Mm-hmm.
So you've identified a triad here of part of what spreading is an empathic mindset, and then also this principle of inclusion and this principle of innovation. And these are all kind of contained in what happens when we do this practice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I feel fully heard. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Oh, sure. Okay. Thank you all. This just, I just feel it's often like taking a warm bath or something, or I'm a California girl, being in a hot tub with a bunch of people or something, like it just feels really good. There were some questions that came up about the technical stuff on Zoom, and I'd love to say a couple of reassuring things, if I may. So basically, the way that Zoom groups work is that whoever's kind of doing the technical part, which for Zoom groups needs to be the host, presses this little button that breaks up people into groups, and then everybody gets this little thing that says on their, shows up on their screen that says you have been invited to join this group. And so when you press that, all of a sudden it takes care of itself. There's like everything dissolves, and all of a sudden you're in this group with a small bunch of folks. And you as the facilitator don't need to do anything except press that little button to say yes when it invites you to join that small group, right? We could potentially give everyone a taste of this here. Nick, if you would be willing to make me host. Yeah, you have a question.
Yeah, my concern is more that the facilitators are spread perfectly
Yes.
out into all the groups.
So somebody, the tech person behind the scenes, and I don't know who will be doing this. I don't know, Edwin, if you'll be able to join us.
I can help with that.
That would be great, because there's definitely a back end tech end of it where somebody needs to make the groups, make sure that there's a facilitator in each of the groups and like that. So, but the facilitators of the small groups don't need to worry about that. Like, you will just press a button and you'll be transported into this room with a bunch of people. And then at the end, and I'll remind people again before we do this, but at the end, there a little timer appears where it says your group will shut down in 60 seconds, and it'll be 60, 59, 58, 57. And then there's a little button, and at that point the instruction is to not press the button, because if you press the button you'll leave right away. The instruction is actually to just kind of hang out. You can watch the counter, you can say your goodbyes, you can enjoy being in your group, and if you press the button nothing bad happens. You just end up being instantly transported out of that small group and back into the main group. So in terms of the logistics, it's super useful if, Edwin, you could be there to help us with the technical
Glad to
aspect.
do it.
Thank you. And in terms of the small groups, yeah, we're just going to be asking each of you to potentially, depending on how many people show up, depending on how many groups we have, to be the host, to just basically say, I'll be the first listener and I will keep time, and, you know, like that. So that was one question. There was another question. Yes, clarification.
Could there be something like a YouTube video on that process that we might be able to see, or not?
On the Zoom breakout groups?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
We could quickly just do a 2-minute breakout group right now, just so that you've experienced it. But Niels, you would need to, I'm sorry, Niels, Nick, you would need to make me host for a moment, because it's not showing up on my screen right now.
I tried to make you co-host. I don't know if it worked.
Yeah, you know what? Or you can do it. I
Okay.
think you can be host. There's a thing that says breakout groups.
Yep.
So just press it and follow the little prompts. And then at some point, you will need to dissolve them so that we can all come back.
Okay. I'll make 2 rooms.
Yep.
No pressure, Nick.
Yeah, there's you can make it automatically or manually. So when we do, yeah, there it is. Join.
So everybody should have gotten a little invite. So
Got
just
it.
click on your little invite that says join breakout room.
Here we are, our little
Hi,
breakout
Edwin.
room.
We did
Hi,
it.
Niels.
You had to join separate. You as administrator, you had to manually join our group. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Because then you can, as a facilitator, you can kind of move between groups too.
Okay. And then, okay, so then I can close all rooms.
Mhm.
All right.
Great.
So when you're assigning facilitators to different groups manually, does that mean you have to assign everyone manually, or can you assign certain people and then automatically generate?
Yeah, everything's manual. You have to sort people. So it's depends on how many people there are. It's quite a job to need somebody to really focus on that.
Yeah, definitely.
How many people are you expecting in the People's Assembly?
I have no idea. I'm not sure how many people are going to be super interested in like putting any input into it. Like some people don't care at all what the national team looks like, so it could be this group.
Okay.
There's a lot of, I've heard just here and there in XR, people who are saying, I just want to go out there and do actions. I don't want to deal with the internal politics at all. And this would definitely fall under the realm of internal politics because we're not planning an action. We are figuring out how the national should be structured. And some people will be very interested and some people will not be. And of the people who are very interested, some people may be interested in joining a people's assembly and some people may not be. And Pam just asked a great question, which is, what about when we were in our small groups, what about people who don't have access to computers? And what kind of recommendations are we making for them? And my understanding is that this is not at all the only way to give input, that there are other ways that people can give input, but I'm not so close on the ground to it. So if Nick or Quinn would like to speak to that, that would be helpful.
Quinn, do you want to?
Yeah, so as far as other ways of giving input, I guess one of the things that we can announce more broadly to people who can't show up or people who are just on the email list, although email technically still requires a computer, but it's more broad, is that you can give feedback directly to the strategy team as well, and that will also be considered. But the assembly process, I mean, yeah, so the people will be able to give feedback directly to the strategy team as well. So it's not just this assembly, but this assembly is kind of the main organ for gathering feedback.
Yeah, Edwin?
You can call in to these. It's not ideal, but you can call into the Zoom room with your phone, so that expands it. And I didn't want to just put my contact info in the chat window if anybody wants it to contact me. And our Empathy Circle work group link is there, and a sample empathy cafe is there where we on conflicts. You can kind of get a sense of how we kind of organized it.
Yes, Pam.
I had a thought about a way that we could provide maybe an in-person empathy group that feeds into the online one, perhaps, for people. Like if we wanted to have a location for people to meet, and then you make sure you have at least one laptop to do reporting back, but you could do a small empathy group in a room that then contributes to the online portion. I don't know if that's too much complication, or if you don't want to deal with it for this time around, or if it undoes what you're trying to do with the online.
I think what you're offering is a great idea, Pam. Can I reflect it back?
Yeah, please.
So what I'm understanding is that you're thinking that there would be a room where physical room where people can show up in person, and that maybe there could be one computer there, and so then that there could be a physical empathy circle in the room, and then during the large group harvest portion, they could participate in the online assembly that way. Is that close?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, but I didn't. It's just as an idea. not
Yeah.
to undo any of the planning that's happening.
And that you're concerned about how it might fit in, or if it's the right timing, or you don't want it to undo anything, but that's
Yes.
the idea. Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Sure. So would it be okay to respond to that briefly?
Please.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I live in the Berkshires, and I'm not going to travel into Boston to organize that. But if anyone wants to create that, we could certainly have somebody signing into the meeting. And then when we group the groups, we don't include them in a group. They have their own group. And then after that portion, then they come back. So it's totally theoretically possible and doable. It just needs somebody who really wants to do it in order to organize it.
Yeah, I would be willing to host an in-person one if that's helpful. We can choose a spot that's kind of central that people, especially to serve people who might not have access to computers and Wi-Fi and stuff on their own. Because I was going to say, we could do it at my church in Arlington, but then you have to make people get to Arlington. It kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, and if you're going to have more than, say, 4 or 5 people, you might want to train up someone so that each of the empathy circles can have their own person to facilitate. And
right.
One more thing is the recording of notes. So we're going to be asking each of the empathy circles, and Edwin, I may want to see if some of your team can show up and help with that as well. Cool. So we need to have a person kind of modeling the empathy circle, keeping the timing, kind of, helping people out with that. And then we want to have somebody who is capturing notes of the content that is shared, because the content of the empathy circle is going to be, like in this particular proposal on page 3, number 4, I really like it, and I think we should include it in whatever the synthesis proposal is. So we need to capture that. Or somebody might say, I'm really concerned about this particular point because I think it could lead to this and this kind of problem, and instead I think we should do X, Y, or Z. And so somebody needs to be, right? So we ideally, in some situations, we just all collectively take notes, but in this kind of thing, I think it will be really helpful to have dedicated note keepers. And, ideally, if some of these people are not from Massachusetts, are not going to particularly want to take part in it, don't have like their own 2 cents to offer, but are supporting our work by just helping to record. And then there's the question that you said in terms of how that gets shared. And I think that in the last few minutes of the empathy circle, so this is is it called rounded up part? The facilitator would be saying, okay, so now we're going to pause. We've had, hopefully time for each person to share and to be heard. Now we're going to look at what the facilitator has recorded down and make sure that we got it accurately, right? And so the first thing, and you read it, and then you might even say you don't have to, but people can do like the wavy hands or whatever. Whoops, she just dropped off the call. Okay. All right. So there's the recording of it. And then if Pam comes back, I would like to also briefly mention that the thing about the concerns that she had brought up before, that's when we do the reporting out. So during the empathy circle, if people have a concern, they don't have to just share positives. They can share their concern fully in the moment right then. It was just when we, there's a different process when we're all reporting out to the big group, where we're going to first hear all the different points from the groups and just note the concerns and then go back in and do the concerns. But that is not something you need to do in your small groups at all. In fact, we don't want you to do that. We just want people to have their turns, and during their turns, they can say whatever it is that they want about what they like about one proposal, what they don't like about it, etc. we're not asking people to put anything on hold at that point. Yes, Nick.
I'm just thinking about I mean, I don't foresee this being like a massive meeting or assembly, but if it is pretty large and we're using the hand signals to show support during the feedback phase, I'm not sure how that would work because the screen can only show a certain amount of faces and then.
Yes. So, yes, go for it. Clarification.
There is a setting on, you can show up to 49 people on the screen. If there's a setting where you say show large amount somewhere, I set it and you actually see 49, up to 49.
Yeah, and if we were doing an online assembly that was really huge, beyond that, there's a poll thing, right? And so people can, you can create a poll, and so somebody shares out. So like say some small group said, we love this particular part of proposal A, you know, on page 2, halfway down the page, and we want to see that remain in the next synthesized version of this proposal. So they would have shared that in their small group, and then that makes it on to the summary notes of the small group. When we're coming back to the feedback session, either the note taker or someone else shares that. And so then we say, in the large group, we say, okay, if it's smaller, let's see hands and count them. If it's larger, here's a little poll. So everybody who's in favor of that, press down on the poll. And then right afterward, we would do another small poll that said, anybody who has a major objection to that, you know, please mark that down in the poll. And then here's what we were thinking of doing. We would ask the person, the people who have the major objection, could you give us a headline, like a 6-word thing or an 8-word thing, just for now? You can tell us more after, but we want to get the initial feedback read on all of the items that we're bringing forth from the small groups before we dive deep into what the objections to any one of them are. So initially, we're just trying to get a read of how much support is there for this item and how many strong concerns there are, and just a headline. And the reason for the headlines is that there might be 4 people who have a concern with that, but after the first person says their headline, everybody else says, yeah, that's our concern. So then we know that when we go back, we don't need to explore 4 different concerns. We just need to explore one concern that was held by 4 people. So that was our thinking about the feedback process. But as a small group person doing empathy circle in your small group, you don't need to be concerned about that. You just need to make sure that everyone has a time to speak. And when we go around a second time, somebody can speak about something they didn't like about what somebody else said. It is totally fine. The only thing that they can't do is they can't turn to that person and say, well, I really disagree with what, you know. They need to pick a listener, and then to their listener, they say, when somebody said this thing about that, I have a very different perspective, and my perspective is, and the listener is going to be reflecting back. But there's no censoring, right? Like nobody has to just be nice or just be positive or anything like that. They can be honest and they can be authentic, but they can't get into a back and forth where they're trying to convince another person or score points or anything like that. They just say it as their part of the thing. Yeah, yes, Peter. Can't hear you.
Well, my time is up and I'm going to have to leave. So I just want to say thank you, and I look forward to, you know, the next phase. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Peter.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. See you soon. Yes, Edwin.
Yeah. So we're sort of designing online people's assembly. So there's a lot of kind of learning and growing and seeing what tools are available. We've sort of been experimenting with these empathy cafes, where the breakout rooms, we've actually been recording them. So we have, you'll see that if you see the link there to the Empathy Cafe we did. So they're actually recorded. And then Google, YouTube is doing a really good job of transcription now. It's like almost, it used to be like, 80%. It's up to like 98% accuracy. It's just like amazing. So we have the text in there and everything else. So, yeah.
You are reminding us, if I may reflect, you are reminding us that there are new tools out there that can make your job easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had, you had told me this, but it's so new that I had forgotten. We may not need a recorder, except that unless we have a recorder, we can't bring back the main points to the feedback session. So if we were doing the feedback the following day, we would have time for YouTube to do that transcription, but it's still a really cool thing to remember that we can get automatic recordings and then transcriptions of what happens in the small group.
We've been doing both, so yeah.
Oh, you've been doing both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know how to, because back when I was trying to do any of this stuff, there was only the possibility of recording one breakout group. So I don't know how you're recording the breakout groups, but I believe you and I'm excited about it.
As the administrator, you can go in and you just give everyone that you want record permissions, so they can record. It saves to their drive, and then they upload it to a shared Google Doc that we have.
Cool. If people are into doing that, I'm totally happy to do the both thing of having somebody from each group record. So Edwin, the easiest thing to do is if you could provide us with, I don't think this is going to be that big, but if you could provide us with 5 recorders, including yourself, and then each of you would be recording, both taking notes on, on a Google Doc, but also doing the video recording thing so that we could have both of those. But I don't really know how to do that also well, and I don't know anybody who does know how to do that also well. So would that be okay with?
I can bring a couple. I'm not sure if not everybody likes to do the recording, and it depends on the times too, because there's several people in Europe, and it's going to depend on the times and things like that.
Yeah.
But they'd love to take part, I'm sure.
No.
But anyway, we're here to support whatever you're needing. So I just put it that way.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, Quinn and Nick, what kind of contact you have with other people who have been doing some kind of facilitation in Boston, because even if somebody hasn't been here for the empathy circles part, like they might still be able to just do the recording the key points on a Google Doc, and could be great if we have. I just don't know how many people we're going to get. I kind of don't think more than 25. So I'm kind of thinking if we have 5 people who could record and both like typing record, but also do a record thing. And then the other thing about the recording is that sometimes when people are new to a process, they feel a little less comfortable with being video recorded. That's what I'm going to use, video recording. So some people may not necessarily want to be video recorded in terms of their ideas and perspectives on a controversial topic. So we might end up just passing on that for now and just having the content recorded, which reminds me that when we record content in this kind of thing, I never put the name down, because it should never be about who said what, but the idea should stand on its own. The only time that I put a name down is if we're talking about an action item and somebody is saying, oh, in 2 days, I will have the notes all typed up. Then I want to know who said that, right? But if it's not an action item, no names, please. Yes, Quinn.
Yeah, Pam said in the Organized Citizens Assembly Keybase thing that she was kicked out of the thing and she can't rejoin. So is there a way that we can get her back in, the more
Oh,
tech savvy people?
so the number of this meeting is 121-491-171. So what she needs to do is she needs to open a browser, go to zoom.us, and then when it says join meeting, she puts that number in. I mean, or she could go to the link that's in there and click on the link, but
Okay, so should I tell her to do that or?
yeah, it's just either, look on Keybase.
I'll post something to her.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for catching that, Quinn. So we are at 5 o'clock. I'm happy to stay on. And I think that we can stop the recording for now because I think we've completed our 2-hour formal training, and I'm happy to stay on and talk with Pam more. So if you want to just hit the stop record button, Nick, that would be cool.